Welcome back, metalheads. Today, I'm spinning the wax with Crypt Sermon drummer Enrique Sagarnaga, and we're listening to the criminally underrated Iron Maiden album, Dance of Death. Don't go anywhere, it all starts right now. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Spinning the Wax, where we listen to your favorite artists' favorite records. I'm your friendly neighborhood headbanger, John Garcia, aka Stay Puft, the metal marshmallow. I am so excited for the episode that you are about to hear because it is the first time that we are going to be spinning an Iron Maiden record on this show. Yeah! It only took us 8 episodes, which actually I don't think is too bad. More than 5, less than 10. If we're spinning a Maiden record every 8 episodes on here, I'll be a happy dude. It's also the first time that we have a drummer in the listening chair, which not only opens up a completely fresh perspective on this show, but also for the album that you're about to hear. My guest today is Enrique Sagarnaga, who mans the battery in several Philly-based metal bands, including Diva, The Silver, and the epic doom metal outfit Crypt Sermon, whose album The Stygian Rose just recently landed at number 1 on Decibel Magazine's top 40 albums of 2024. Way to fucking go, guys. That is a hell of an achievement, and it is a hell of a record, so definitely be sure to check that one out if you haven't done so already. And in addition to all of that, Enrique is also head of PR at Relapse Records, where he's been for the last 6 or so years. And something that he and I have in common is that Iron Maiden is our favorite band of all time. So I just about did a backflip when he said that he wanted to bring on their 2003 album, Dance of Death. Despite this record having some of the most infamously horrible album art in Maiden's career, and it getting overshadowed by Brave New World just a little bit, it really is a fantastic album from top to bottom that you can find a lot of really good stuff in, and you'll hear us both gush over all of the reasons why we think it's such a fantastic album. Enrique also talks about how this album can be an excellent gateway to Maiden's later era stuff for fans that may have only paid attention to their earlier albums. But on the flip side, it can also be a really good gateway to Maiden's earlier stuff if nobody is familiar with their previous stuff and maybe this is the first album that they go in on. Enrique also opens up about his connection with the band's music and how it's become just a reoccurring theme in his life, that a Maiden album is going to help him through something, some turbulent time, something that will move his life a little bit forward. Dance of Death specifically helped really ground him during those really trying and awful teenage and late high school years. Of course, there's also plenty of drummer talk about Nico McBrain's choices on this record and how it essentially shaped the drummer that Enrique would eventually become, as well as differentiating between Iron Maiden's epic songs and Iron Maiden's hot dog songs. So please, welcome to the show, Enrique Sagarnaga. My friend, welcome to the show. It's good to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so I guess this is our first time talking. So before getting into chatting about the record that we're about to listen to and everything like this, I do have to say you are, congratulations, the very first drummer that I have had on this show. So it's going to be nice to be coming from that type of perspective and everything like that. But I'm curious, how long have you been at Relapse, and kind of what started your journey to get you there?
Sure. So I believe I've been at Relapse since the tail end of 2018.
Okay,
Prior to that, I worked as in-house promo for Season of Mist.
cool.
And that gig lasted, I think I had that gig for upwards of 8 years. So I've kind of been in the scene for quite a long time now, wearing all sorts of different hats, everything from like doing public relations, even at an independent level, to doing digital marketing for bands, and then of course playing, in my own projects and endeavors. So I've been in the music industry for well over 10 years at this point.
What really was kind of like your spark and your interest in heavy metal, and how did that translate to be like, oh fuck, I need to be a drummer?
Sure. So I'll start with the drummer story first.
Yeah.
I think growing up, my mother really wanted me to partake in some form of arts, whether it was visual arts or musical arts or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, And I remember being just like a little boy, probably in kindergarten, taking like rudimentary snare drum lessons with a teacher who would come by my house, and he would teach me how to do different rudiments and stuff. Fast forward way ahead into the early years of middle school for me. I was growing up in South America, and we had my school had a program where you basically had electives, and the first year you had to take every elective available so that you would pick what the electives would be for you like later on, kind of more concretely.
Yeah.
So uh I was really kind of scared to do the music elective because I was super afraid that I would have to learn how to read sheet music. It scared me to death. I don't know why. But when I did that, I got to try all sorts of instruments, like brass instruments, woodwind instruments. Then there was a drum kit there. And when I sat down with the drum kit, I loved it. The musical notation for it was by far the easiest thing for me to read.
Yeah.
And then I got to tell you, this like loser of a music teacher just did not want me behind the kit. Couldn't tell you why. So I almost like had this like immediate interest in the drums, like out of spite. Shout out to Ms. Bradner.
Yeah, that's very heavy metal, actually. Like, fuck you, I'm gonna play the.
Yeah, I hope that teacher is eating crow. But that said, I started to really have an interest in it. So my parents were supportive. They helped me, get my first drum set as a kid, and I started taking independent lessons. And I started, throughout middle school and throughout high school, I started getting involved with the local music school back home, which was pretty much like the National Conservatory of Music, but they had all these programs for people who work there, people who were performers for the different Bolivian orchestras and things like that.
Wow.
To teach younger kids how to play. So I had a mentor growing up teaching me how to play drums. So that was my career as a drummer, right? But when it came to heavy music specifically, right, I think it's just kind of that very similar, familiar story that everyone has, where you're, a kid, whether it be a teenager, some people it's even younger, right? And you feel a certain way about things, whether it's maybe there's something about where you live that doesn't sit right with you, or maybe you just have emotions and feelings that don't sit right with you, and maybe you struggle to articulate them at the time. For me, I grew up in arguably the poorest country in Latin America, if not the poorest country in Latin America. I lived in Bolivia till I was about 18. And I came here to study, in college. But, anyway, growing up, like, I just saw a lot of wrongdoing and injustice back home, a lot of things like systemic racism, religious oppression. We're talking about a country that's like, as of the last time I saw it, it was like 75% indigenous. So that means that there is this like Catholic, I almost want to say affliction, but it was like this Catholic oppression that just kind of permeated throughout the country. We have these big, beautiful cathedrals that were built out of stone, which means that they were built on the backs of like indigenous slaves. And when you read about Bolivian history, it's a lot of bloodshed, it's a lot of coups, it's a lot of military takeovers. So I think once you start kind of getting that worldview and you understand that so much of this is founded on what is fundamentally kind of like injustice, you start feeling a certain way. Combine that with teenage angst, combine that with just getting through life, right? Whether it's there or in the USA or anywhere. I think that's going to probably direct anyone, especially if someone's already kind of a cynical person like I am. It's going to steer them towards fringe arts, things that are against, things that are, clash culture, counterculture, whatever you want to call it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, heavy metal was really a great vehicle for me to finally be able to look at something that can help articulate some things for me,
Yeah.
And it was fun because heavy metal, especially when I was coming up, it was still very much like taboo. Even asking someone for I've told this story before, but like I remember being a kid and you ask the local music guy who's selling CDs out of a kiosk, because we didn't really have big music stores. We had a few, but you ask some guy at a kiosk who's selling magazines, DVDs, and music, like, do you have the newest Brujeria CD? And he'd look at you and be like, oh my God, like shh, and he'd go back, behind the kiosk and bring you something, and he'd also give you like a stack of other shit he thought was cool.
It's like an
And
occult, like
yeah,
like
yeah, and
an oddities shop or something.
totally. And for someone who's like very disconnected from our world and who understands, like it's someone who doesn't understand that the story of Brujeria is, in wrestling we call it kayfabe, right? Like it's
Sure.
kind of like it's just like a storyline about who these guys are, that they're all like these, drug dealer guys or whatever. But that guy probably, thought it was real, and you see the album covers with the severed heads and stuff like that. Like, so for him it was taboo, and he was selling this music to a kid. So I'm sure for him it didn't feel great. but
But
if
also
you're
at the
that
same
kid,
time, buddy, right?
sure. And if you're that kid and you're buying that, man, that's like the coolest fucking thing you could possibly do. You're like, oh man, like I'm asking this guy for something that made him like kind of shit his pants a little. Like so it just reaffirmed that what I was doing was cool and felt cool. And it just kind of like rolled on from there, right? Like and then you start letting punk music come, like flood the gates, and that further helps you articulate how you feel about certain things, and just kind of rolls on from there.
Yeah, and you said rolls on. I mean, I specifically use the term like pushing the snowball down the hill or whatever, right? Because
Yeah.
I know we've all done that where we find that one thing, and I've talked about this on this show before. Is like for me, it was hearing System of a Down on the radio. Like that's really
Mhm.
like chop suey, and then that kind of going. And then I just watched a documentary about this. The Tony Hawk Pro Skater soundtracks were very influential for me. I mean, that was, I mean, we're going to be listening to Iron Maiden today. That was really one of the first times where I really, the Number of the Beast was on the Tony Hawk 4 soundtrack, and hearing that over and over again about like 666, the number of the beast. Oh my, like what this guy is talking about, like devil worshiping and shit like that. That's fucking cool. And then that kind of opened the door. So I guess what were your, like obviously we're going to be listening to Maiden here in a second, which we'll talk about in a second, but like what were your first bands? So you mentioned Brujeria, but like, or were you like very classic, like I listen to like Slayer, Metallica, all that stuff to kind of open the doors for you, or did you have
Yeah.
different South American bands that were kind of getting you in as well?
Yeah, I think like I've joked about this before, but like if you grew up in South America, in your night table, you'd have a Bible, like a family Bible that your mom threw in there, your grandma threw in there, and then right on top of it was like Sepultura Roots or one of the older
Yeah,
records, depending on how old you are. And like
right.
for me, like the gateway bands were, of course, bands like Metallica, bands like Slayer, and even there was like the reinforcement of these things that were appearing on music video channels back home, like System of a Down, that they just kind of further normalize these like very abrasive sounds, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, like the bands that really kind of propelled me in any sort of direction with this stuff, it was a combination of Iron Maiden, which is like my favorite band of all time. Bands like Judas Priest. I loved Slayer, but I loved where Slayer took me more so than
Yep.
I loved
I know
Slayer.
exactly what you mean. Yep.
So and I still vividly remember, like I have this story about how in the throes of teenage angst in high school, I came across Emperor's in the Nightside Eclipse, and at the time I was listening, like I'm an insomniac, so
Mhm.
I was just up listening to records till 3 or 4 in the morning almost every day. And I remember like there was a day I discovered both Immortal and Emperor in the same day. And when I heard Emperor in the Nightside Eclipse, like that record just like knocked me on my ass. Like when Into the Infinity of Thoughts kicked in, I just like I I had felt a certain way I had never felt before. It
Yeah.
was like someone experiencing highbrow art for the first time ever.
Yeah.
And it just it created such an impression on me. And I think in terms of my tastes for metal music, whether it's heavy metal or black metal or death metal, what I appreciate are when bands can kind of make you feel that way. And I think what captivated me was the fact that all the lyrical themes of bands like Emperor at the time, or Iron Maiden, or anything, like the unifying thread was that these records would transport you somewhere thematically, lyrically, even the sounds. If they sounded alien enough to you, especially compared to other stuff you were listening to at the time, they could really like kind of propel you somewhere.
Yes.
Um, And that takes us to today's pick.
I was giving you the thumbs up because, and this is known on the show as well, Iron Maiden is also my favorite band of all time. Like, you can't see, I have a Fear of the Dark, poster right in front of me. I have a Brave New World tattoo.
There we
Like, I would
go.
not be
Yeah.
sitting here talking to you if it wasn't for this band. Like, this was my very first. I guess technically, when I was in middle school, maybe Nirvana was my first like musical obsession, but Iron Maiden was really the band that really propelled me. And this album in particular, Dance to Death, I was so excited when you told me that we were going to be listening to this because this album had just come out about the time that I was like really, really starting to get into like heavy metal and buy my Metallica records and my Judas Priest records and everything like that. So this was my first introduction to this band as like being this is their new record, this is their new stuff, and I still think it is just an absolutely incredible record, very, very underrated. I know it gets shit on because of the album art, but Enrique, why do you love Dance of Death by Iron Maiden so much? Why is this your pick today?
Sure. So I always love giving this record love when I can,
Yeah.
because I feel like it is quite underrated. I think it played a huge part in my life at a time where I was very down on myself, and there's a lot about this record that is strangely uplifting. In my opinion, it's got some of the more like positive, borderline like positive fatalist lyrics that Dickinson ever wrote.
Hmm.
Um, as a drummer, it's worth noting that this is, I think, the only song that has double bass drumming on an Iron Maiden record by Nico.
I know he also wrote a song on this one as well. He has a credit on this album, I believe.
And I think it's funny because he went back and said he absolutely hated that experience, which breaks my heart. But I'm also happy that he stuck with what he knows to do, you know?
Sure.
And I don't know. I just think that is, especially post Bruce return records, like, there's a lot of people who are never going to look past the first couple, right?
Of
Like, there's
course.
people who are never going to revisit the newer material. There's people who actively reject the newest records, and I still think they're strong. But I think that if there is such a thing as a gateway to newer Iron Maiden, I think it's this record and Brave New World, obviously,
I
right?
100%
So,
agree.
and I think out of the two, people always push Brave New World and the Rock and Rio set around that time forward, right? So there's less of a chance that someone's going to come by this record
Mhm.
than there really should be, in my opinion. So I figured, let's give it some love. Let's talk about it a little bit and kind of dive into it.
Yeah, I love that. And like to before we get into it, to your point as well, there are so many earworms and ear hooks on it. Whether it's like Face in the Sand, I think is one of those like monumentally underrated Iron Maiden tracks just because
Yeah.
of the way that the vocal lines go. And I don't know, it's just like this is one of those records, and maybe we could quibble about it when we're listening to it as far as like, is it like a track too long? It's 67 minutes, almost 68 minutes, whatever. But I mean, I can listen to this one from start to finish basically if I just feel like I want to put on a Maiden record, I can do that and have a great time. I just picked it up on vinyl a couple of months ago, and like hearing that like in my little study out, fucking whatever 20 years after it's come out or anything like that, which is crazy to think about now. Like, this album is as far today as when I discovered it as like when Somewhere in Time was when I was coming up, which fucking like
Yep.
blows my mind. It's just holy shit.
I think we should talk about the presentation of the record very quickly.
Oh yes, you've got the record, please.
So the story of the cover art, I think everybody kind of knows what happened, right? It was it was supposed to be a referential illustration using 3D models, and I guess the band and management said, "Screw it, like let's just make this
I
the
believe it was
cover art."
Harris himself. He was the one who's like, "We're doing it. Let's do it."
Yeah. But what people usually don't talk about, which I think is very interesting, especially in terms of putting you somewhere in a place, is the promo photos inside the record.
I love
One of the
these.
things I think is really interesting, if you guys ever pick this up or just look it up on the internet, you can kind of see the band members like in different locations. They're like in this like kind of old Victorian, decrepit looking room, and there is like what I think looks like a naked body that's always fuzzed out. Like, you can't really make her out. She's very blurry, and she's clearly like dancing around the band, almost like this ghost-like figure. I've never seen them do a photo shoot like that again, and I thought it was just really cool and very different, not only for them, but just for any band in the genre to kind of attempt that. But anyway, my 2 cents about the layout, but
So we've been talking about it, we've been gushing about it, and I'm sure that we'll gush about it for another 68 minutes. This is Iron Maiden's 2003 album, Dance of Death. Let's go. What? two, 1, 2, 3. This one specifically, you were talking about like the positive outlook, the more uplifting thing. This is very much a uplifting song. I'm gonna get you, like I'm running, and just like it does exactly what this song says in the lyrics.
Yeah, I think that, like, if there's such a thing as a band that is contemporary of Judas Priest, bordering on writing a Judas Priest song, I think this is one of Iron Maiden's attempts at it.
I've
I don't know how,
never thought about it like that before. That's incredible. Yeah.
yeah, like when I think about Priest, I think about songs, especially off Screaming for Vengeance, that make you just want to hop on a motorcycle or hop in a car and just take off into the sunset. And essentially, lyrically, that's what this song is about, right?
Yeah.
Out on my way, out on my own again. It's just this declaration of just like putting shit behind you and moving on with your life and riding off into that sunset. So I thought, that song already has like a really cool vibe to it, and just like Nico counting the song off in that voice of his, it's just, I don't know, it puts a smile on my face every time.
Yeah.
So this record came out in 2003, which would put me, it would put me in high school when I was listening to it. And that's the time where maybe if you're a late bloomer like myself, you're finally enacting on crushes with girls and moving on with your life, and like all the little teenage drama that comes with it. So songs like these can help a guy get through some shit. I just like the burst of positivity from this record and this song, and it definitely came out at a time in my life where I needed it.
I was going to say I had the exact same experience with Different World from A Matter of Life and Death, which is another very positive start to an album. I mean, it's a very similar lyrical thing as far as like, yo, I'm doing my thing, like whatever comes this way, whether it's good, bad, I'm going out. And those lyrics specifically on Different World, exactly the same thing. It was 2006. I think I was starting my senior year of high school, and same exact thing where those lyrics were exactly what I needed to hear at that time. So you mentioned Rock in Rio, which, for good reason. I think it is probably the best Iron Maiden live performance that they've put out there. Someone could argue with me if they want, staypuftmetal@gmail.com. But the one that the Death on the Road set that they did after this one was also fucking incredible.
Yeah, and actually, to that, I still think one of the better Iron Maiden like post like Bruce coming back songs is Brave New World. And the fact that that song is documented on Death on the Road, oh my god, chef's kiss.
Yeah.
And also, just to say, like, the 1-2 punch of this song with what's about to hit us next.
I'm glad you mentioned it, because the first 3 songs on this album are like 10 out of 10. Would not arrange them any different.
So
it's so good.
This song, it's probably one of my favorite Iron Maiden track titles. I just think the idea of a rainmaker is so cool. Bruce said the song is about kind of just washing away bad things in your life. Again, it's that recurring theme of moving on, like, getting through the blues. This song in particular is the song that helped me get past like some sort of formative high school breakup. It's very funny in that way.
Interesting.
But I love this chorus. I think it was very interesting that this song is the one that got a music video off this record for them, but I never saw it promoted heavily, and it was somehow kind of hard to find on the internet. I wonder if the band didn't like it.
I don't know, because they also, Wildest Dreams had a music video too, but it was like 3D. It was like a Pinewood Derby car, like going through like Eddie's face and stuff like that. This is one of my favorite Iron Maiden songs, just like full stop. From the intro, they do the Trooper kind of bookending it with that really cool riff. The vocal lines that we were talking about just stuck in your head all the time, and it's so expertly put together where it's just a simple song structure, but coming back and repeating and circling around to this amazing pre-chorus, then into this chorus that we're listening to right now is incredible.
I also think as far as people who were at least coming up in the time we were all young, trying to learn how to play drums and stuff like that. Like, this song is so meat and potatoes on drums. It's just a really fun way to learn. I know that Nico is criticized for not having the best tempo maintenance throughout records, but This one always felt pretty solid. It's just fun. And going back to the conversation about the music video, I loved it. I know that I think Bruce looked a little weird with the gelled up hair at the time, but that's him being a product of his time, you know.
Yeah,
But I think
exactly.
like there's amazing visuals in that video. They have these like if I might be misremembering a little, but it's like these acrobatic visual artist types that are wearing these elaborate costumes and masks, and there's the rainfall and everything. It just looked so cool.
Yeah. And then this harmony, right? Like, hey, amazing solo into another one. Whoa!
Yeah.
Oh my god, I'm so happy. I love this band so much.
Yeah, I mean, no, me too. And I think too, in terms of Bruce coming back, like his vocal performance on this song in particular is probably the strongest one on the record, just in my opinion. Like he doesn't let up. It feels like he's almost like reinventing Moonchild or something. Like
Interesting.
or anything off Seventh Son. I kind of get those vibes. Like he's going high, he can stay there.
Yeah, and then right here, he's in his kind of like mid-range and stuff like that. Speaking to that, we were talking about Death on the Road. One of my favorite songs in that is Lord of the Flies. His version of Lord of the Flies is just, and like, no shade to Blaze Bayley. You were talking earlier about how there's some people that just don't, you know, they're only gonna talk about like the first like 5 or 6 Iron Maiden albums, and then they don't listen to the new ones or whatever. I am a staunch defender of Virtual 11. I actually think that is a better album than many people give it credit for. It just suffers from a lot of lack of production, and The Angel and the Gambler is one of the worst songs that Iron Maiden has ever written.
Sure.
But like they still have a lot of really good songs on there, and I think, you know, like no shade to Blaze Bayley because he's not Bruce Dickinson, but hearing him, you know, sing Sign of the Cross or sing Lord of the Flies or something like that, you know, I've heard him do Man on the Edge before, and it's just so good. And hearing that range where he goes low and then high, he's a good singer. He's a good singer.
No, and you know, a thing about that too is like how good the songwriting can be on that record, like Virtual Eleven, for example. Like when there's the odd instances of Bruce singing a song like Future Real, you can tell that they had something there. You know, maybe there was a miscasting or something like that. But no, I actually generally agree. I think the only Iron Maiden record I haven't really enjoyed like throughout their catalog would be X Factor.
Yeah.
That might be the only one, but
Sure.
even then, like, I mean, still listen to Man on the Edge, you know? It's
Man
okay.
on the Edge is great. Lord of the Flies is great. I mean, The Aftermath. After the war, what does a soldier? It just takes so long to get through there, you know?
Yeah.
And so we're on No More Lies, which again, just when you talk like Iron Maiden epics, this one right here is just such a mood. You mentioned transporting you to another realm, basically. This is what that song did, and I can just like the amount of times that I astral projected from my bedroom and my headphones to wherever Bruce is taking us right here.
Also, Bruce likes taking you into the point of view of a man who's either on death's door or is going to be killed or something like that. This is a song that is very much about that. It's like a guy in his final hours, right? And there's something about the mood of the song that's obviously somber because of the topic, but I think the thing that's interesting about it is like he almost like alludes to reincarnation, like about coming back to set things right. And, you know, obviously the chorus is No More Lies.
Yeah.
So there's obviously some sort of like regret there. And I think what's interesting is how powerful and uplifting the first couple of songs were. And then he's taking you to almost an exact opposite situation, but there's still this like determinism behind it. There's still this like, you know, we'll come back and fix things and things will be whatever they have to be, but somehow they're going to be positive.
And this part too, you know, they're all sitting at my table talking tall and drinking wine. It feels like, you know, he's saying, okay, these people are comfortable in with what they're doing, but not me. I don't want to be these people. I want to, again, come back. And exactly when you're saying that, you were to someday maybe I'll wait till then, you know, just like, I don't know what it's going to be, but I will be back on this earth.
Yeah, and I just think, I don't know, it's a very interesting mood shift, and as a songwriter, I feel like it's interesting that like I almost wonder if the first couple songs were written in one go, and then like this mood shift was written as a part of a different like slab of songs that they got together and the mood was different. Like, because I do think it is a pretty stark shift. It's just interesting. You could see them kind of take that width and breadth of it.
Yeah, and I'm looking at like the writing tracks and stuff like that. This is actually the only Harris penned song on this record. Everyone like he has writing credits and everything except Wildest Dreams, but this is the only one where he is the only credit on this one. So I wonder if also that has to do with that mood shift as well, because you think about the songs that he's written, very very dour, very very somber.
But it's interesting because like the songs that follow like definitely keep this vibe going, especially the title track too.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is kind of like a prelude to Dance of Death. I've always felt like.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's cool. Like this is like the one song on the record where I feel like I know Harris writes so much for them, like you were saying, but like one of the few songs on the record where I feel like the bassist very likely wrote like the lead melody for the song. You could just tell in how like high up the bass is in the mix during the lead. Yeah, I just wonder if he just presented that to the guys and then it just kind of evolved from there.
So this was produced by Kevin Shirley, who has basically done all of their records since, I believe, since Bruce coming back, maybe even before that. How are you feeling about his mixes nowadays? Because I know you meant we could get into how you feel about the new records or anything like that. I'm happy to do it because I like them. But I know that the biggest complaint about the new records is like, man, they gotta get Kevin Shirley out of there. Like, what is he doing with these mixes? All that. Do you share that sentiment?
No, I don't. I actually always like their mixes. I've never really had problems with any Iron Maiden mix that wasn't Virtual 11 and X Factor. And even then, like it's not terrible. They're just too dry for my taste. But what I think is kind of more interesting, especially as a drummer, because I try to keep an eye on that kind of thing. Like, I love the way Nico's kicks are mixed. Especially on the newer records, like the sound of his kick drum in this record in particular, it's really hard to replicate. Like I know I think at the time he was probably using a Premier drum set. But yeah, it's very thuddy. It sounds great. Like and even when they do like the busier or like the busier orchestrations on songs like Dance of Death, like it's not, in my opinion, it's not overbearing at all. I could see people who liked the more 80s tone with the hyper reverberated vocals and that kind of 80s metallic sheen to things, thinking that this is a considerable more like alt rock sonic departure. But I think on this record in particular, like Bruce's voice kind of aged like fine wine. It sounds great. I don't think he needs anything. Like he like it. So I've always enjoyed it. I've never had a problem. Even with modern records, some people don't like Bruce's current voice, but you're not going to fix that by giving him reverb. You're not going to fix that by echoing out certain parts. Like he just sounds like he's going to sound.
Well, I see. So I'm not like a production audiophile type of dude, right? I'm like, oh, this was compressed this way or done that. Like, I just I listen, right? So I don't necessarily have that big of a problem with the way that the record sounds. My quote unquote biggest gripe is the fact that like, some of the songs on like Senjutsu or Book of Souls probably could have been edited down just a little bit more. But that's neither here nor there. I actually like the way that Bruce's voice has aged, especially on Senjutsu. It sounds like he's now this wizened old wizard who's singing at you, and you can hear that age in his voice. I think actually kind of like for writing on the wall or the parchment actually works really well for what they are nowadays.
Absolutely. And in terms of like latter records, I think he doesn't really get his due for what he did on the Final Frontier. Even like some of the vocals on that record are actually pretty exceptional.
Dude, like, are you fucking kidding me with the chorus on that? Where it's just like, hey, I can't even fake it.
And I know now, like as he's older now, he has to sing things a little differently. But I think that's true for just about any of his contemporaries.
Hetfield is the same way, right? Hetfield doesn't sound the same way that he did 10 years ago.
Even Priest, right? Like Halford sounds phenomenal. That newest record is very impressive.
Yes, I really liked it too, and he sounded great.
Yeah, but I do think that if you have a keen ear for it, he does sing a little differently. And in
Mhm.
live too, like I caught them on a tour years and years ago, and it was probably at a time where I don't know if he was sick or he was just trying to protect his voice. Like there were certain things he had to cut off from the set list. I don't think he played anything off Screaming for Vengeance, for example.
Oh wow.
And I would think he did. I think he did Painkiller, like maybe,
Mhm.
but like the highs on like those two records are very very high. So
Yes.
I would assume that's just a product of you getting older, not you kind of sucking or just being
No,
worse. You
and
know what I
also
mean? Like
yeah, and depending on what time it was too, because I've been seeing Priest since 2005, and and I've talked about this before, where towards right before Richie got in the band and everything like that, when it seemed like they were running out of steam, I did notice his voice start to decline from the 10 years or whatever that I heard him before. But since Richie Faulkner has come back in the band, and they're Reaper Souls is all right, Firepower was amazing, Invincible Shield I think is the best thing that they've done since Painkiller, potentially even Angel of Retribution, depending on how you feel about that record.
yeah,
But since then, there has been a noticeable incline in the way that he sings and doing those highs and stuff like that. And I don't know if that's just feeling more invigorated because of the material, or if it's just like having that second wind in your sails. But like I said, I just saw them a couple of weeks ago, and I mean, they did Devil's Child, they did what they did, Riding on the Wind, they did Victim of Changes, all of
yeah.
the stuff that he was doing. And you're right, there was a couple of things where his delivery was a little bit different, but when it came time to do the Victim of Change, he was belting it, like glasses were shattering everywhere, fucking speakers were cracking. So, I mean, it's just a matter of like, nobody can be who they were fucking 40 years ago or whatever, right? But I still think whether it's Halford or whether it's Dickinson, what they have been doing and how they sound now are still good, and I'm still a fan. I'm sure that they have off nights, and throughout the fucking like 200 tour dates that they do, some people are probably not going to see them at their very best, but they're also fucking like pushing 70 and 80 years old. I don't know what
No,
you want from
it's
them
very
now.
impressive. Like even like not to make this about me, but like in my own band, like in Crip Sermon, for example, like when Brooks first started singing with us, that was the first time he'd ever really tried singing in a band, period. So his
Oh
his
wow.
vocals from the first record to now our third record have changed considerably
Very much, yeah.
because not only has he gotten older, he's just gotten better at singing and been able to kind of hone in more on kind of how to do it and how to do it in a way that is appropriate for the music that we're writing at the time. So everything feels like a snapshot, right? So
Yeah.
with that in mind, this is Maiden's 13th record. So to bring it back to Bruce, this is where they were. This is how he learned to do things post his comeback. And you have to also think that this band has always tried to be their own animal, no matter what year you're listening to them in.
Hmm.
So like this is just their understanding of what music should have sounded like in 2003. Like
Yeah.
this is not, them trying to appeal to like an MTV crowd or some shit. Like it's not that. Um, I love how playful this little part here sounds. Is this the song about the castle raid? I think it
Yes.
is.
Yes, it
Yeah,
is.
he's looking on the ruins, and he's talking about, I think it's like a Catholic and Christian invasion of who was it?
It says the Cathars, Christians against the Catholic Church at the time,
Right.
were inside the castle and lost this. Thank you, genius.
Yeah, I almost said Moors. But yeah, and of course, it wouldn't be an Iron Maiden record without him giving you some sort of history lesson.
I know, or a history lesson where you just want to like march like this through it, which is like the gates of the blood on the stones of the citadel.
Yeah, but to me, like for people who criticize the band for like going in a different direction with their music later on, like to me, this is still very much a decidedly classic Iron Maiden song. Like,
Yeah.
it's a song about a battle that you probably never heard of prior, and they're making it kind of fun. Like you think about like subject matter of like Run of the Hills, like it's got a dancey hi-hat to it. This is kind of along the same lines of that way of thinking.
Quest for Fire, which is one of my, I think probably my least favorite Iron Maiden song ever, is very much like that too. Or just like, here, we're going talking about the caveman, giving you a historical lesson. You can just like, you look like you're marching with a torch up there and everything like that. And then, oh my God, this song. This could be in the set list for every concert that they play for the next 50 years, and I would be fine with it.
So it's hard for me to pick a top three songs on this record because I do think that like the first three songs alone could take that spot, but then you're
Yeah.
also ignoring the title track, you're ignoring this song. I love this song. I so hope I can hear it live someday. um, and it's interesting that now, historically he's taking you from, ruins and battles and what you think of with like castles and knights and swords and shields to now something that's by their standards a little more contemporary.
Yeah, the Everglades, like Iron Maiden singing about fucking Florida, but I mean, like that's where I know Nico and a couple of other guys live there now. But it is just
Yeah.
again, like you were talking about Judas Priest. It's weird to hear Rob Halford singing about memes in 2014. But
Yeah.
it's kind of weird to hear Iron Maiden mention the Everglades.
But what's cool is like if you think about like the narrative of this song, right? It's a guy, he's drunk out there, and he's telling you a story about basically seeking ghosts and having this kind of like almost masquerade kind of situation going on.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think that's what speaks to the album cover too. But I think like if there's a narrative here, right? If the first couple, I think it's interesting that like let's say the band's trying to cheer you up with the first couple songs, right? Then they're throwing you into something that's more deterministic, something that's more like battle driven. They're giving you a history lesson, right? They're trying to carry you through the idea that sometimes shit hits the wall and you got to fight through it and you got to protect what's yours. And now, like, this is almost like a reprieve from all of it. They're just trying to take you somewhere that's magical and haunting. And to me, this song is a song I've listened to a lot when I was really in the throes of like a depression. If I really wanted to just kind of get whisked away to somewhere and just feel something different, for me it was this song and Brave New World of all songs.
Interesting.
There's just something so big about this song and how it builds and how they really take their time, like taking you to the final, that moment of pause before the song kind of kicks back in with the orchestration. I do think there's something very funny about the drums on this song. We're gonna hear the quiet part in just a second, but when they come back in on the verse there, it doesn't feel like Nico hits the crash cymbal. It just feels like he goes into the beat on the hi-hat, and it always left me wanting to hear a crash right there. I don't know why. I think as a drummer, I probably would have done that,
Yeah, well, you can't. When Crip Sermon covers this song at your next show, this is such a Yannick Gers riff too.
Yeah. So right here, when he comes in on the drums, yeah.
Oh yeah, I see. Yeah,
he just goes into it. Like you kind of want a big, and then go into it. I just thought that was always so interesting.
Just a perfect example of like a great transcending songwriting because it's so evocative at the beginning, right? And it's like you have the chords and the nice melody, but Bruce is really taking you along, and then now we're in this transported realm where there's these ghostly figures are dancing around. He changes his vocal delivery in it, and I see exactly what you mean about transporting you and kind of like taking you out of that depression to focus on something else, even if it's for 8 minutes and 36 seconds or whatever it is, just for that little time. And Iron Maiden very much has been a band like that for me to get me out of depression, even if it's just for a little bit, or kind of like calm me down, or to get out of my head for a little bit, to throw on something that's a little bit more theatrical and transcendent is very much something that I use myself as well.
Yeah, put this record on, take some Lexapro, you're good to go. Let me tell you.
Yeah, exactly. Every day, man, every day.
Yeah, and talk to a friend. But that said too, like I this song did a lot for me. And it's also remarkable that right now we're at the 4 minute and 30-second mark of the song. So that means that by now, 4 grindcore bands have played a song.
Yeah.
Other bands have just finished their hit single, and this band is halfway through this track, and
we still got like 4 solos to go, dude.
It's breezing by. I also think in terms of, people point to the double kick on this record, but I do think that in terms of Nico's drumming, like how impressive he is on that single pedal is really, really showcased on this track. Like it's that it's just so cool. It sounds so good.
Dream of Mirrors is another one where I automatically think of that as well, because he has almost like the gallop through, it's just like, how the fuck do you do that? I mean, you're a drummer, right? And I know that, like, I don't know a drummer, heavy metal wise, that I've personally known that is like all single pedal. If they're playing in a heavy band, it's all double bass. Maybe if they were playing like in jazz or something like that, it might be that single pedal. But every kit that I've seen from a drummer that I've played with or that I've known has a double pedal on it. So like, are you able to kind of like for non-drummers kind of put into perspective the difference between the difficulty of just trying to play with a single pedal like that versus the double bass?
Yeah, it's just a matter of like if you're using two kick pedals to do like a gallop beat, so like you're effectively cutting your workload in half,
Hmm.
right? Because you're splitting it between 2 feet. So if you just use one pedal, you're going and anyone could really do that if they practiced it enough, but just it being that steady and that consistent and that being like his signature thing is really interesting.
Mm.
And the technique to do it correctly, you almost feel like you have to slide your foot back and forth and kind of
Yes.
let the pedal do its own work. And he's just so good at it. Like even like when you watch him now, I know in recent years he had a couple of issues live. He wasn't feeling well. I remember that he put up that YouTube video that said like a message from Nico, and I was heartbroken just reading that title because I thought he was announcing a retirement or something
Yeah,
like
I did the
that.
same thing. I did the same thing.
And that followed like him kind of botching some like Run of the Hills intros and all that stuff. But like he really carved a name out for himself doing some pretty like simple signature things that just weren't common in that space. Like I think, don't get me wrong, like the intro to Painkiller, for example, what a crazy drum intro, right? It's
Right.
incredible. But I think of like Nico in a band like this also points to the fact that you don't have to do that and you can still be incredible, right?
Yeah.
And for me as a drummer, and I think a lot of other drummers, especially in extreme music, even, you have to split the difference between you can be flashy and cool, but you also have to serve the music and not
Exactly.
overplay stuff, right? You don't want to sound like you're wilding out on the kit unless you're in a band that's really about that, right? If you're in a tech death band, go for it, but
Yeah.
figuring out where you can kind of pop in and do something and kind of pop out is really important. And I think Nico, I don't know, man, he's just like a drummer's drummer, man. I think he's just so cool in the way he does things, and his choices are so unlike anyone else's.
And that actually, so you're talking about Painkiller. That reminds me of an anecdote from Peace of Mind when he joined the band, because you have where he goes, he said that after coming in from Clive Burr, he was like, I have to do something to set myself apart, or just to give fans a reassurance that like, because Clive Burr was an amazing drummer, right? But like just like to set himself apart. So he did that. And then, the rest is history, basically.
And there's so much cool stuff about Clive Burr too. Like there's a lot of stuff that sounds like he's going like this on the hi-hat, like but people don't realize it's all one hand.
Jesus Christ.
So even for the time, like I don't know if they ever had an eye to the Ramones and how fast you could play a hi-hat on one hand, but Burr was like super impressive with that too. And it must have felt daunting to come in and have to play those parts not like he does, and just kind of still make it work.
That's exactly what he said. And I don't think that many people are ready to have this conversation. But Gangland, I think, is Clive Burr's shining moment as a drummer. Just that start with the drum.
Yeah.
People hate that song. I fucking love that song.
I still believe this band rarely does wrong, and especially if you're pointing at anyone to like just earlier material, you can't go wrong on just about like anything, to be honest.
Yeah.
I love this song because like we're on Gates of Tomorrow at this point,
yeah, just this. It's kind of like that. Again, back up to the uplifting, like the major key. Like, all right, we're out from the dour. Let's refresh the mood a little bit.
Yeah, it's like they're recalibrating, and what I like about this song is, how can I put this? Sometimes, you know how they go like, "Oh, why would you eat a burger? Because we have steak at home," like that kind of saying. And what I always think about this song in terms of the context of the record, you just came off the title track, you just came off No More Lies, you just came off all these giant songs, and it's like, man, sometimes you just want a hot dog. Sometimes you just want a hamburger. You want something that's just kind of easygoing. You're going back to Wildest Dreams. Like you're kind of keeping that posy vibe going. Like it's very impressive that they're able to do that and it doesn't come off as a shortcoming.
No, and especially this vocal harmony that we're listening to, you don't hear it like this anywhere else on this record, so it's also giving you something that you haven't heard yet before, which is Bruce Dickinson harmonizing him with himself. That just, if you think if he was only doing one of these lines, it would not nearly have the same impact.
It also has like this kind of punk snarl to it, the way he's just kind of like speak singing it, and it
Yeah.
almost reminds me of the lesser attempts of that in X Factor. And this so as a drummer, I gotta tell you, this rhythm right here is actually one of my favorite rhythms to play ever. Just because of where you're putting the snare drum in relation to your kick drum, like it really lets you like hammer it down. In my other band, The Silver, I pretty much got to write an entire song around that specific rhythm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just love this song because I think if there is one song that's about like fatalism, this one's in, because I think Bruce is talking about like the fates in this one.
Mhm.
And again, this is like an Iron Maiden hot dog song. It's just what you expect. It's what you like. All the trademarks are there. I don't know. I can't say enough good things about this song. There's also like a sneaky amount of little guitar harmonies and solos on this one. It's like very packed. That might be why I love this, because Somewhere in Time is my favorite Maiden record.
Mm.
And it could be there. Like the Somewhere in Time, to me, I always just want to listen to that record all the way through instead of siloing out like a specific song. And I think it's because, and I don't mean this in a bad way, it's just like that whole record is just like a bunch of really good Iron Maiden hot dogs. And and if that makes sense, like it's just
Yes,
like
it does.
one fucking awesome platter of everything that is really good feeling about that band. And
Yeah.
just again, like it just overflows with positivity.
Yeah, there's not a dud on that. I agree. I always go back and forth. It's just like ask me on a certain day, my favorite record will either be Power Slave, Brave New World, Number of the Beast, Somewhere in Time. Sometimes I can't choose because it's just like just give me all of them. But I also Adrian Smith is my favorite member of Iron Maiden, and he had such a hand in Somewhere in Time. I think that's one of the reasons why I gravitate towards that. Because like even like a song like Stranger in a Strange Land, you just like
It's just so cool.
it's
Like
so
that.
cool. The guitar work on that is cool. The lyrics are cool. I don't know, just like Iron Maiden's cool. It's
Yeah,
just
I know,
like,
and I mean, even Sea of Madness, such a cool ending to a song. Like the song Heaven Can Wait is one of it's actually one of the more important songs in the soundtrack of my life. That song
interesting.
helped me kind of tackle the death of my grandfather in a
Oh
way.
wow.
The whole story about that, but it's just the recurring theme for me has been this band has helped me move on in my life every time. And there's always like this hesitation I have when I see that they have a new record out, because I think to myself like, oh shit, new Iron Maiden record. I wonder what horrible thing is going to happen to me that this record is going to then help me pull through.
Oh.
So it's bittersweet in a way.
For a long time, I kind of went back and forth on how I felt about like, oh, I like New Frontier better than Gates of Tomorrow. I like Gates of Tomorrow better than New Frontier. I don't know how I feel because it's like you have them squeezed in between two epics of Dance of Death and Passchendaele. But as I've become older and wiser and have more correct opinions, I like them both.
Yeah, and with Nico's playing on this song, I just like how crazy he's going on that ride cymbal. Like this song in particular, back in 2003 or 2004, it led me to go on this quest of finding like the perfect ride cymbal for me. And it wasn't the
Okay.
one he's using, because at the time I think he was using
I think he's using Peisty.
Peisties. Yeah, he's using Peisties, and I know he has signature cymbals now, but I don't know if he did back then on this. But I use something else. I'm a Meinl guy through and through, but this song and the cymbal work on it is actually a big reference point for anything I do on records I record.
Wow. Okay.
I just like how that it's washy and it cuts through and it doesn't sound too messy. It's very cool.
I'm a good sucker for a ride bell. Like I'm not a drummer, but like if a drummer can just start doing the ding 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 ding, ding like
Yeah.
whatever it is, just like fuck yes, you got me. I'm in the pit right now. It's so good. Oh my god. This is another one just like earworm chorus right here. Like this pre-chorus into this chorus. Just I'm going to be humming this for like 4 hours after we get off.
Bruce also it's one of the few choruses where he's harmonizing the chorus in the way he is on this song. It's like he's almost combining like the 80s sheen he's always had on his big belts, but there's a little bit of a snarl, and the trail end of this chorus is very contemporary for the time. Like, I don't know. Yeah, like there's something very like rock music in 2003 about this part.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
If
It's-
you could
it's
just
very
imagine me, like little 14-year-old me, just fucking karate kicking during this part, just like dun dun dun, just fist bumps everywhere.
For me, this was just a quiet contemplation and walking around.
We all react to music differently, right?
Yeah, I know. I mean, this would have been me junior year of high school. No, wait, no, I'm sorry. I'm wrong. This would have probably been me like freshman or sophomore year of high school, depending on when I found it.
I would love to see them play this live.
Me too. I remember seeing the Death on the Road DVD, and I thought like the presentation of everything off this record was just so freaking cool. Like even Bruce's costume when they did Dance of Death, and
Yeah, he's
thinking
got the
about like,
cloak.
and
You
he's
know,
spinning around, and I'm just
uh-huh.
wondering like how is he not falling down? How is he
Um,
not dizzy?
I was watching that with some friends because I think it was one of those things like I picked it up at Tower Records on like a Friday after school. We went to, my friend's basement or whatever to watch it. And I remember we lost it because as he starts Dance of Death, he's got the masquerade thing. He's holding
Yeah,
a mask or whatever. And then he puts it away and he takes it away. And then he's got another mask on behind. And we fucking lost it because you're like, holy shit, that's like an airplane where the unsolved mystery guy takes off his glasses and he's wearing another pair of glasses underneath that. But then after that, he's like, as I walked onto the coals, and then they shoot red light up at him as he's walking to make it look like he's walking. It's like every little bit, to your point, every little bit was thought through on that production set for that concert, and it is incredible. And now we're
yeah,
at one of my absolute favorite songs of
yeah.
Iron Maiden's, and just this rhythm of the hi hat, the ominous tapping part right here. I don't know if they've done a song quite like this since writing. Like I think Passchendaele stands on its own before and after, as far as like a unique Iron Maiden song.
And I still like this song is a song that makes me wish that the band would do like a crazy limited small club tour where they only play B-sides.
Yeah.
I think so many Iron Maiden fans that would love to hear like a B-side tour.
Yes.
Just like because like I mean, don't get me wrong, I will see them every time they come. I'm going to see them in November, I believe, in Philadelphia, and I know that they're playing a lot of stuff off somewhere in time. Like I'm very excited to see that. I'm going to probably weep as I always do when I see them. I'm just like a drunk crying mess at every show I've ever been to of theirs.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think like man, especially with Bruce's like solo project and Harris's solo projects, like they still play club rooms as those bands, you know?
Definitely.
And I think it'd be so cool if they, I don't know if it was like a series of secret shows or what, but just like just play shit that people don't get to hear live ever. I think any of their fans would really appreciate that. I know Metallica did that with some really limited old school set shows, which is a little different, obviously, but you know, the concept is proven in a way, you know?
Yeah, and what I'll say, again, I love Iron Maiden, favorite band in the world. I think one of my biggest gripes about them is just like, okay, so you know what their set is going to be for like 2 years as they're touring and everything like that. Whereas like bands like Priest, bands like Metallica, I've seen them several times. The set list has been wildly different, and they bring out,
Right.
obviously, there are songs that Maiden has to play, and unfortunately, a lot of the songs they have to play pretty much take up most of a set list time to begin with. But yeah, I really do wish that. And I don't know, maybe it's just because of the production that they have with the live sets and everything, but I do wish that they were a little bit more flexible with like, fuck it, like we've played, 20 songs so far in this run. Now we're going to throw something in with, play fucking Passchendaele, or we're going to play No More Lies or something like that for a while.
Yeah, and anniversary shows can always make that happen. So who knows? Maybe next year they'll bring this record back or something. Like but I think like I'll never fault Iron Maiden for just playing the classics because who doesn't want to hear them? But
Yeah, of
I've
course.
got to imagine, I'm not in this position at all, but at some point you become a band where every show you play is someone's first show.
Hmm.
It's their kid's first show, and you've loved the band for 30 years. Like that's got to be tough. You want to meet expectations, right? And I mean, to this day, you still see fans walking out of that concert being like, "I can't believe they didn't fucking play," and it's something way less obscure, like they didn't play Run of the Hills or they didn't play, like so. There's got to be some sort of I don't know if it's a compromise or what, but it's got to be tough, man. I think that's why bands like the Misfits end up playing sets that have like 25 songs and they just play them as quickly as possible. Slayer did it too for the longest time. They were just trying to
Yeah,
like get through every fucking big song they've ever written. And I think at some point, and this isn't to talk shit on anybody, but like you get to a point where when you're just kind of crushing your set through like that, it all starts becoming a blur,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And you lose effect. You're like, I would not want them to play this song live if it meant that they had to like crush it and play it as quickly as possible to throw it in the middle of 20 other songs. Like that's,
Right. The first time I saw them was on an Ozfest where they were only doing like the first 4 Iron Maiden records, right? Which is great as a kid, just getting into Maiden and all that other stuff. When they came back and it was like a mid-between tour, it was like they did like fucking everything from Brave New World, Dance of Death, and A Matter of Life and Death that they didn't play last time. So they had, Brave New World, These Colors Don't Run. They played A Brighter Than a Thousand Suns. All of those like really cool songs. Ghost of the Navigator, which is to this day when that starts, I still get chills down my spine.
it's like a
with
12-minute
that one.
epic. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like they played all of those things. Like that's what I wish that they would kind of, and they kind of do that again because, they're trying to mix in with the, okay, we played 3 songs from Senjutsu on our Legacy of the Beast tour. Now we're mixing in the other Senjutsu songs with Somewhere in Time songs. So I see them trying to do that. I just,
and they're playing like Alexander the Great for the first time ever,
Yeah,
right?
like,
on this
props
tour,
to
like it's
them.
cool. Like they definitely have an eye for that, and I think maybe, hopefully, now that like especially mainstream social media is so big now, that bands like that can actually measure the success of doing things like that. Like they'll be able to see that fans actually do appreciate that it's not a bummer, that people do want to see this stuff live.
Yeah.
I remember reading about like way back when, like Dream Theater's tour calendar and how they had this like crazy wheel of set lists that once they played a show, they would turn the wheel and it would completely change their set list to be songs that they didn't play the night prior, and they kept doing that. And like
that sounds
I
like
don't-
something Dream Theater would do, actually.
I don't have time for that. Like I don't
No.
want to turn music into a math equation, but I will say like I think it's really cool that there's at least one kind of huge band that's deliberately doing that. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and then you can go through like, Opeth and Baroness recently have been doing like, choose your own set lists where they'll, 10 of these songs are going to be what you choose, and then we'll play some other ones and everything like that. I like that as well, to kind of be like, hey, especially after the pandemic, it's a nice way to kind of engage your fans and get them excited for getting out to shows and stuff like that. But I'm not saying that like, oh, every band should do that or that's going to be the next thing or should catch on. But, having that idea is really cool. Kveler Talk did a live stream during the pandemic where they spun a wheel. It was like a game show thing. They like spun a wheel and like whatever the wheel landed on, that was the song that they were going to play, which I thought was really fun.
That's very cool. I remember years ago I saw Opeth at a Psycho Las Vegas festival, and I guess Michael, his voice had it gave out before the band even went on. Like he was sick or something, I forget. But he gets on stage and he goes, "Hey guys, I lost my voice, so we're gonna try our best here," And then they carried forward with what was mostly as much of an instrumental set as I think they could make it, and it was still fucking awesome. But at one point he did start asking the crowd, like, what do you want to hear? And some guy yells something. I forget what song it was, but he was like, all right, we haven't played that in like, however many years, we can try it real quick. And then they played like the first like minute and a half of it. It was very funny.
Yeah. It's just like, no, this is not going to work.
Yeah. So Face in the Sand, here it is. This is the first ever and I think only double bass Iron Maiden song. It's very cool. I will say Nico did no favors to himself by playing the song at this speed. Even me, like hearing it right now, playing double bass with my feet on the ground. It is just such an uncomfortable speed for a drummer. It feels like it should either be slower or faster.
Just like because you could do this pretty easily with one foot. Like I do this just because of my ADHD. I fidget at this speed,
And not only that, but like what's interesting to me about it is like, okay, the first song I ever record double kick on, it should be the 6.5 minute song. Not one that's like 5 minutes, not one that's 3.5 minutes or something like the opening tracks. Let's do the 6.5 minute song. That's daunting. And I think even more interesting is I firmly believe Nico is so good at single kick pedals, he could have just played this on one foot.
Yeah.
As you hear it.
Honestly, I did not know that this was like that there was even double bass on this album. I was just like, there you go. It's just like it sounds fine.
And I didn't know for years. I thought he just hammered it out on one foot, which if you play blast beats a lot, like this tempo is fine for a blast beat, like da 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 da. It's not that hard. But I remember being a kid, like trying to learn this song, like in high school at some point, and I'm just going on it with one foot because I'm thinking that's how he's playing it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until years later I read that it was a double kick.
Can I also mention, transitioning from drums to lyrics, just how both prophetic and still timely this song is with the lyrics and everything like that with going on. It just like, it feels like this could have been written in 2024.
Of course, I think like the most effective metal bands, especially lyricists, are the ones who can kind of put you in the place and time that they choose to. And Maiden can either be hyper specific or incredibly ambiguous, right?
Mhm.
Like Dance of Death is another one. In a Final Frontier, Where the Wild Wind Blows, right?
Yeah. Dude, I listened to that so much in 2020. I was like, they knew.
They knew, yeah. Like, and you know, like that song is like a story about, I think, a family that hides somewhere.
Yeah,
because they think
it's
the
like
bombs went off,
specifically about
essentially.
nuclear war, which is a topic
Yeah.
that Maiden loves to sing about.
Yeah. So like, you know, they thought the bombs went off, so they hid, and it didn't end up being that. They just, you know, they were scared about something that didn't happen, right? They're very good at that.
Mhm.
And I think it's funny because as I see heavy metal progress with contemporary bands, I'm seeing a shift in lyrics where they're not being as ambiguous. They're being like really hyper specific. And that's not a bad thing either. Like that's interesting. I like that bands can kind of get enveloped in their own world about this, that, or the other.
Of course.
Eternal Champion's a band that comes to mind. Like they have a whole collection of books and authors that they pay attention to. Black metal's the same way. You know, it's so hyper specific. It used to just be like either you hated Jesus and you loved the devil, or you loved Lord of the Rings. It was just those two things.
That's it. Yeah.
And now there's so much more in between, right? And yeah, I don't know. I like that this band has always been able to kind of chameleon through timelines, subject matters, like ambiguity that then becomes contemporary. It's really interesting. And I gotta wonder, when you write songs like this, especially like because most of their songs have huge choruses, right?
Yeah.
Like, but especially a song like this one, like I wonder when it comes time to, I guess nowadays, like bigger bands can just look at their Spotify streaming numbers and decide what to build a set list off of.
Mhm.
But back then they didn't, right? So what makes you not put this song in the live set?
Right?
Right? Because this would be like, you picture this with like 10,000 screaming Brazilians in Rio, right? Like it just makes sense, right? Yet it doesn't happen. Also, if you pay attention to how that song ends, you hear him kind of just like smack the snare drum and the bell, which is a weird way to end a song because you
Yeah.
usually want to go on a crash or something big. So to me, if I'm struggling on double kick the whole time and I'm just fucking tired and the song needs to end, I'm just like, fuck it. So that was a very human ending to that song. So this is another one where Nico's kick is actually really impressive. If you hear how quickly he's fluttering there to yeah.
You'd think he'd
And
use
also,
the
this
double
is-
bass on this
in
one.
Age of Innocence to me on this record has one of the coolest like scumbag fucking guitar riffs. You just feel like a bad guy listening to it. It's so cool. I don't know, but I just like that they're talking about bad guys. The riff sounds like a bad guy riff. I call it a bad guy riff.
A bad guy, yeah.
It makes me feel like I'm a guy that's about to get beat up in the background of Streets of Rage.
Fuck yeah.
Love it. And it's also interesting that like they went in terms of like mood shifts, right? Like again, this kind of brings it to like a darker place sonically than what's been on the record aside from Passchendaele. It's
Yeah.
just very different. It's almost kind of angrier.
Yeah, we're about to get this. You call it a bad guy riff. I call it like a fight riff here in a second
Yeah.
after this harmony. And he's got that snarl like he had in like No Prayer of the Dying and Fear of the Dark too.
Yeah, it's a different side of Bruce. I also think to me, this little part right here, this vocal part right here is very 90s sounding.
Mhm.
So it's just funny they take you from like 80s bad guy riffs to that, you know. But I do think this song, if like foundationally it's about being like fed up and angry, I think this totally speaks of it. If you are the kind of person who doesn't consider the next track, it's weird. Like, you know, the next track, Journeyman, is another first for this band.
Sure.
Like that full acoustic, very weird, very different for them. If you don't want to listen to it because of that, this is a very weird song to end the record on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In my opinion, if I could have tinkered with the record track listing, I would have probably put this before Face in the Sand so that it ends on a huge note. But I actually do like that. This song feels like almost like a summary of where you've been throughout this record. Like it
I
just it
agree.
feels very introspective. It takes you somewhere else. Like
I go back and forth because sometimes, depending on when I listen to it, I feel like that might be the only song on the album that I might just like skip over to get from Face in the Sand to Journeyman. But I don't think I would actually actively say like let's just like take it out of the set list or anything like that. But I also I'd never skip this song. I fucking love Journeyman. I've listened to the electric version as well. I don't think it has the same vibe and the same feeling as this one does. And I don't know, in my opinion, it's just after this dour part of this record just ending on this almost this ode to life, kind of where you're just like saying whatever is going to happen is going to
yeah,
happen. I just think that it's great.
it's really cool. There's some borderline Dream Theaterisms in this song. Like this part right here could kind of be on Scenes from a Memory or something.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I think it's solely because of that like instrumentation in the background, like the strings. Like there's just something about it. But I do like how it just kind of ties everything up.
I know that most of this album is in 4/4, and then we get this song that's the acoustic in 6/8, and just kind of has that flowing, kind of swaying feeling to it.
Swig your beer around.
Yeah, exactly. And again, they played this on Death on the Road, and all of Dortmund is singing along, and it's just, oh man, it's just so good. I know what I want, and I'll say what I want. Just like in the pub, where you want to have your arm around a bunch of hobbits and just like swinging back and forth and drinking your ale,
It almost feels like a post. I heard the record and I'm looking back at it and I'm at a bar with my friends talking about it. Like there's something very camaraderie-y about it. I just like it a lot.
Yeah. Well, the Brits do love a good sing-along. This could be very much like a football song.
This is very different for them. Like it's cool that I feel like this is indicative of the idea that they could write a whole record that sounds like this. Like it's just very acoustic-y. It doesn't need like a crazy distorted guitar at any given time. Like the song wouldn't benefit from that.
No.
Do I love the chorus on this? Not as much as what I've heard on the rest of the record.
Sure.
Just to say. But I do think it is an earworm too. Like I'm gonna be saying, I'll say what I want. I'll do what I want. Like in about a half hour.
Yeah. What I also like too, I remember when this came out and a lot was made of, first acoustic song is Iron Maiden going soft, like all that fucking bullshit that bands still have to like contend with and deal with today. But then, you think about it in like hindsight, the next album that they did was Matter of Life and Death, which went like far into like the proggy realm and stuff like that, where they really went wild with some of the song structures and the stuff that they tried to do. So it's like maybe this was like a portend to experimenting and like really trying to start doing something a little bit different, which you have to, whether you like the new shit or not, I feel like you still have to give Maiden props, because it's not like they're just doing the same shit that they could have been doing, because they could have come back and here's a 45-minute album just of like Maiden bangers or whatever that we worked out, and here you go, and go through the motions. But they're still actively trying to do things differently and be their own band, and it's pissing some people off, but like I think you have to give them credit for that, for just like continuing to forge their own path and do their own thing. And this 3-album run, Brave New World, Dance of Death, A Matter of Life and Death, in hindsight, 20 years after the fact or whatever, I put these albums up just as much as I would Seventh Son and Power Slave and everything like that. I still think that they're different, but they're still strong, and they're still really fucking good, despite them just wanting to do whatever it was that they wanted to do.
Yeah, and I think like there's certainly, like you said, like a progression from one record to the next, which means that those 3 records will also give you completely unique experiences. I think, was A Matter of Life and Death the first one that they got like an Academy nod? It might have been.
No, that was Final Frontier, because I think that
was it Final Frontier?
El Dorado was.
It was El Dorado.
I think it won a Grammy. I know it was nominated, but I'm pretty sure that it won.
I don't know. Like I've always thought that the trajectory this band was on was very unique. And like I talked about the Iron Maiden hot dog songs, and I love them. I think they're my favorite thing in the world, honestly. But it's nice to see that when they put new records out now, they'll still include one of those kind of songs, but
Yeah.
it won't be three of them. It won't be four of them. It'll just be one. And if you're really thinking the record is a slog to get through, you'll hit that song and you'll remind yourself why you love this band. And it'll
Yes.
be more often than not just enough to carry you through the rest of the record, because you'll start
Yes.
to recontextualize it surrounding that song. At the with Senjutsu, and like if you don't like that record, you can listen to that song and like kind of remember what Maiden was about like in the early years, and then just get back into the record, kind of recontextualizing it that way. And if you love this record, then you have songs like The Parchment, right? Or even like I don't know, I think about the opener. Like this record specifically to me is permeated more throughout current Maiden records than even Brave New World has.
I agree. I also find a lot of Virtual 11 in Senjutsu, but like kind of talking about the first three tracks of this one, I love the first three tracks of Senjutsu because the title track is like way different than anything that they've ever done before. And then they have what is it? The next track, the
Stratego?
That's it. I knew it would start with an S, which is one of those hot dog Iron Maiden songs, like and then I think that Writing on the Wall is one of the best songs that they've written in the last like few years because it has that theatricality that either here we see the right. It's just that like you could hear crowds of people singing that song. So I'm a Senjutsu defender, even with some of the like longer songs that take a little bit and everything like that. But and that is Dance of Death, my friend. I love it. Pulling out and then you just kind of sit for a little bit. So Enrique, I know that you're butting up against time and have to go, my friend. So thank you very much for listening. Quick before you go, do you have any final thoughts, any final words, parting things about this album, what we just listened to, or Iron Maiden music in general?
I think just give Maiden a chance, man. If you only like the early records, you can stick with those. But if you were to really try and revisit the catalog, at least give this one and Brave New World a chance. You might become a newfound fan again. Maybe you'll discover a whole array of other records that have absolute bangers.
Yeah.
Up the Irons Forever. Please, everybody out there, keep heavy metal alive. We need it. We need it more now than ever before, I think. And yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Take it
Enrique,
easy.
thank you so much for listening to Iron Maiden with me. It's been a blast, and I appreciate you spending your time in your busy day hanging out.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Take it easy.
As above, so below, there's so much more to know. Beyond this flesh, I prayed and I cried, I choked down my pride.
Up the irons, indeed. That was Enrique Sagarnaga of Crypt Sermon, of The Silver, of Diva, of Relapse Records. Thank you so much to him for sharing his time and for experiencing that album with me. I know it's one that I can put on and listen to front to back pretty much just any time, and we know that it is one that he can do that with as well. Don't forget to check out Crypt Sermon's new album, The Stygian Rose, that is number 1 on Decibel Magazine's Top 40. Thank you very much. Put some respect in Crypt Sermon's name, goddammit. No, if you like epic doom metal and bands like Maiden, Merciful Fate, Candlemass, or Chemist, I think that you're going to find a lot to enjoy with that record. It is a hell of a time and very much that theatrical, immersive style of songwriting that can kind of astral project you to another realm. You can also check out The Silver for Enrique's post-black metal project, as well as Diva if you're in the mood for some mosh-inducing blackened thrash. All of those bands are great and have albums recently that you can check out, and you can follow Enrique on Instagram at Hank Sangria and at Relapse Records. Well, that is the end of another episode, my friends. Thank you for listening. Thank you for experiencing this music with me. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the YouTube comments if you're listening, or send me an email at spinningthewax@gmail.com if you want to get in touch and talk about your experiences. What was your first Iron Maiden album? What is your favorite Iron Maiden album? Does it change with the wind like mine does? Or are you pretty set on Number of the Beast or Power Slave for yours? Check us out on the socials at Spinning the Wax, and check us out at Patreon, where you can get early access to episodes, new music, updates, exclusive content, and a bunch more. We're going to be doing several year-end lists pretty soon. My favorite albums, best songs, underrated albums for you to check out. So definitely head over to patreon.com/spinningthewax and sign up. We'll be a little quiet for the end of December as we rest and recover and get fat for the holidays. But after that, we will very much be kicking up the content as the new year rolls in again, and we have to get this train going. Can you believe March? The albums in March have already been hitting my inbox, and we're not even done with 2024. So I can tell you 2025 will be busy. Head over, support us, follow us, subscribe, all of that other shit, and I promise you, you will get your metal fix through us. Thanks again for listening, everyone. We will be back in 2 weeks on December 18th when Beck Thor Weston of Aussie Face Crushers Terminal Sleep bring Linkin Park's Hybrid Theory onto the show. Prepare for a lot of talking about our cats because we sure do love the fuck out of them. Until next time, my friends, stay safe and stay sane. Stay heavy. Stay puffed. We'll see you on the other side, everybody.